Welcome to this explainer. Between 1939 and 1945, the entire globe was engulfed in a conflict that completely shattered and then totally rebuilt our world order. Today, we're taking on the massive task of distilling the most destructive war in human history into a clear, digestible narrative. It's a colossal story for sure, but by breaking down the sheer scale, the strategies, and the ultimate legacy of World War II, we're going to grasp exactly how these incredible events shape the very reality we live in today. Let's get right into it.
So here is the roadmap for our explainer today. We are going to trace the causes, the climax, and the consequences across 6 quick sections: the spark of war, the Axis advances, the turning points, the human cost, the final collapse, and finally, a world transformed.
All right, part 1, the spark of war, the buildup to global conflict.
To understand the explosion, we really have to look at the fuse, and the roots of this conflict go way back to 1919. The crushing economic terms and heavy reparations from the Treaty of Versailles created deep, deep resentment in a Germany that was already struggling with massive hyperinflation. Fast forward to the 1930s, and that profound desperation essentially rolled out the red carpet for Adolf Hitler and fascist ideologies. We're talking about a militant nationalism that also gripped Imperial Japan and fascist Italy. The global community tried desperately to prevent another war through appeasement, but, well, by early 1939, it was painfully obvious that approach had completely failed. This decades-long buildup finally detonates in September 1939 when Germany invades Poland. That was the definitive spark that set the world ablaze.
And when Germany did invade Poland, they didn't fall back on that slow, muddy trench warfare from World War I. No way. They unleashed Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This was a revolutionary military tactic, specifically calculated to create instant psychological shock and total disorganization. Imagine fast-moving Panzer tanks, coordinated Luftwaffe airstrikes, and just overwhelming speed, breaking through lines before the enemy could even react. It was so terrifyingly effective that Germany conquered Poland in just over a month. The world was completely stunned, and it forced Britain and France into a desperate declaration of war.
That declaration takes us right into part 2, the Axis advances, the juggernaut.
Over the next few years, the war exploded outward, and it really fractured into 2 totally different realities, which just highlights the insane global scale of this thing. Over in the European theater, it was this massive, continent-spanning grind of land and air warfare, Germany and Italy against the Allies. We're talking sweeping tank battles in the scorching North African deserts, all the way to Operation Barbarossa, which was Germany's freezing, brutal, and ultimately catastrophic invasion of the Soviet Union. Contrast that entirely with the Pacific theater. After the shocking surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Imperial Japan faced off against the U.S. and its allies in a radically different setting. This was all about rapid expansion, massive naval fleet battles, and a grueling, bloody island-hopping strategy across the vast expanse of the ocean.
Which brings us to part 3, the turning points, the momentum shifts.
So after years of rapid expansion and what looked like effortless Axis victories in places like Denmark, Norway, Belgium, and France, the Axis powers suddenly hit a brick wall. Almost simultaneously across the globe, they critically overextended themselves, and the momentum violently shifted in 4 definitive clashes. In the Pacific, the Battle of Midway handed Japan a devastating surprise defeat that permanently cost them their naval dominance. In the scorching sands of El Alamein, the Allies successfully halted the seemingly invincible Axis desert advance in North Africa. Over on the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad turned into a freezing, catastrophic meat grinder that destroyed an entire German field army. That was the exact moment the unstoppable Soviet advance began. And finally, on the Western Front, the Allies pulled off D-Day. This was an astonishingly complex amphibious invasion that smashed right through Hitler's fortified Atlantic Wall and officially kicked off the liberation of France. We need to intentionally slow our pacing down now for part 4, the human cost, the unimaginable toll.
Behind the brilliant strategies and the shifting front lines, there is a profound, staggering tragedy at the dark center of this era. 6 million. Honestly, there are simply no words that can ever truly capture the horror of the Holocaust. But this single number represents the 6 million Jewish victims who were systematically and brutally murdered under Nazi ideology. Driven by rabid anti-Semitism, innocent people were literally ripped from their homes, forced into ghettos, and sent to extermination camps like Auschwitz. And we have to remember, this unfathomable number exists right alongside millions of other persecuted individuals who were targeted solely for their race, religion, or identity. It stands forever as a terrifying testament to the absolute depths of human cruelty.
Beyond the battlefield itself, we really must confront the shattered human lives left in the wake of this global warfare. World War II didn't just redraw borders on a map.
It created tens of millions of refugees, it wiped out entire generations, and it left survivors physically and psychologically scarred. It is absolutely vital that we anchor all these massive historical narratives in raw empathy. We can never, ever forget the actual people, the families, and the communities behind the statistics.
Moving from that heavy reality back to the military resolution, we enter Part 5, the final collapse. The squeeze on the Axis.
By late 1944, the Allies were systematically dismantling the Axis powers from all sides. Germany was basically caught in a giant, inescapable tactical vice. From the east, you have this relentless Soviet army driving German forces backward across Europe, reclaiming territory mile by bloody mile. At the exact same time, from the west, following a really hard-fought Allied victory at the crucial Battle of the Bulge, American and British forces are closing in fast. This massive two-front squeeze made any kind of sustained defense completely impossible. The pressure finally culminated in the total siege and fall of Berlin, Hitler's death, and the unconditional surrender of the German military. The long nightmare in Europe was finally over. But over in the Pacific, the fighting was still raging with unprecedented ferocity. That is, until a top-secret scientific endeavor literally changed the course of human history forever. The Manhattan Project, operating under immense secrecy, led to the abrupt development of the atomic bomb. The deployment of these weapons, with their sheer, unearthly megatonnage, resulted in devastating, instantaneous strikes on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This completely unprecedented scale of destruction forced Japan's final surrender, and it brought the global conflict to a sudden, sobering close.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, A World Transformed, The Legacy.
The ashes of 1945 gave birth to an entirely new, deeply complicated modern world order. In fact, the immediate aftermath built the very systems that govern our lives today. To try and prevent a catastrophe like this from ever happening again, the global community established the United Nations. We also saw international justice take a massive leap forward at the Nuremberg trials, where leaders were held legally accountable for war crimes for the first time in history. But, the end of one war immediately triggered the dawn of another, the Cold War, which was physically manifested by the division of Germany. We also saw the rapid acceleration of global decolonization as old, weakened empires started to crumble. And maybe most importantly for all of us today, out of all this immense darkness came the formal rise and codification of modern international human rights laws.
As we wrap up this explainer, we are left with a massive, vital question. How can we ensure the dark lessons of this history are never repeated? World War II is not just a collection of dates and old battles. It's a stark, enduring warning about the extreme fragility of peace and the depths of human destruction. It's our collective responsibility to understand these historical forces, to champion human rights today, and to never forget the past. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.